Hey friends, this is your career coach Mingke, and in this video I'm going to share with you how I hired a candidate in my previous company, and hopefully this video is going to give you enough insight so that you know how a company hires from A to Z. Often during our job application process, we lack the insight of what happens on the other side of the table, and we feel like we're just throwing ourselves into this black hole or this black mass of unknowns, and we often feel like we're throwing our dots without a clear goal. So this video is going to give you the insight and the process of how our company make a decision when it comes to hiring a specific candidate. And I structured this video into 5 important steps. The first is how company identify what kind of talents they need to recruit. Second, how they write and distribute the job description post. Third, how we screen the CV and the initial application materials. Then I'm going to talk about the interview stage and how we come up with the interview questions for the candidates. And last, how do we make a decision on which candidate we want to ask them to join us. So if you want to know the ins and outs of how a company operates in the whole recruitment process and how you can maximize your chance of getting the job, then keep watching. Before we start, make sure you check out this free training that I put together, which is going to help you to get the shortcut in your job application process, so you don't have to go through all the mistakes that I have previously made before. So let's get started. So the first thing we're gonna do is to see which type of person we're gonna need in our team. And there are 3 things that we usually do in order to get a sense of what kind of talents and skill we need to add into the existing team. So first, we're going to have an assessment of the team to understand what kind of skills we have at the moment. So for example, previously in the marketing team, we had someone who looks after the events, who looks after creating creative campaigns. We also have someone who does the content creation, writing different blogs, and also someone who manages the social media. It might be one person doing multiple things, but generally speaking, we tend to bracket different skills into similar ones. So one person is able to use his strength for existing skills. So we essentially find out is that we need someone who does the analytics side of the marketing, and also someone who does the heavy lifting of the operation, which means, wiring all the software together to make sure that, every campaign is capturing all the necessary information. So the second thing we do off the back of that is to see what's the ideal scenario we want to have in our team. And usually speaking, you want to make sure that you have enough people so that they take different workloads, and at the same time the team is operating at the full capacity, so you're not under-resourcing, you're not underusing people's strength, but at the same time you want to make sure that there is communication strength that happens across different team members, which means that we need someone who looks after the front end, and also we need someone who looks after the back end. Then the third thing that we're going to do is to identify what are the gaps that are missing. The current situation is that we have everybody who does the front end, who is creative, who knows how to create content, and then how to talk to the third-party initiative, but we actually need someone who looks the back end, and this is the type of people that we are going to look for during our recruitment process. This helps us to validate that we actually need someone who looks after the back end, who track the results that we have produced, and then give effective insight to say whether the previous campaign is effective or not. So once you know what kind of person you're looking for, then the next step of the whole recruitment process is to draft a job description. A job description is essentially a document that lists out what type of company it is, what kind of people they're looking for, and what are the main responsibility this person is going to carry. There are 2 steps when it comes to job description for a company when they're recruiting people. The first is to actually write the job description. So the job description should be a good overview of what the company does, the industry the company is in, and what kind of team it is, and as well as what kind of people they're looking for. This includes the soft skills. This also includes the technical skill. For example, for marketing, you might need to know how to actually run the analytics and know certain softwares and have a pretty good degree of analytical skills. The job description is also going to give you some brief overview of what kind of responsibility that you'll be having, so that you know on a day-to-day basis what kind of work you'll be doing. If you're watching this video and if you're looking for a job, then reading a job description right is going to be very important to help you understand if this is a role that fits your background. So if you're interested in me producing a deep dive of how to read a job description properly, comment below to let me know. Then after the job description is written off and also reviewed by the team and the manager, then it's a time to distribute the job description. And this is usually done by the HR or the recruiter. So they're going to take this piece of document and distribute it across different channels to increase the chance and exposure of the job description being seen by different people. Usually they will do that through first the website, definitely, the career section, and then they will also distribute it through different social media channels, for example, like linking. This is where you guys can see the linking a lot of job posts, and also they can distribute it through different, third-party websites, for example, like Indeed. And the third stage is reading the CV and application materials. After the JD has been posted for some time, lots of people are going to start sending their application in, and they fill up the application form, attach the CV, sometimes the cover letter, just to tell a little bit more about themselves. How the company usually screen and select CV is very depending on the size of the company. So I'm going to give you two scenarios of how companies select for their CV, so then this will help you to understand what they are looking for and how they select different CV. So for big companies, talking about massive corporation with like thousands and thousands of employees, when they post a new role, especially for graduate schemes, there's going to be tens or hundreds of thousands of applications sending in. So it is humanly impossible for the recruiters and the company to go through every single application with their CV one by one. And if they do it, it's very likely that they're going to introduce some human errors. What they usually do is they're going to get some system and tool in place to help them to select and filter the CV to find the most suitable candidates for interview stage. And the system they use is usually called application tracking system, the ATS system. They're going to tell the system, okay, these are the things I'm looking for, these are the basic requirements, and if you don't meet the requirement, your CV will not be selected for the application, or you will be not selected for human review for later. But when it comes to smaller companies, when they only have, let's say, 200 employees, then once they release a new job opening, it's usually they will have just like maximum hundreds of applications, and they will have the chance to go through each application manually. And usually the recruiter or the HR will be the first person to look at your CV, but sometimes the manager or team member is also involved. Moving on to the next stage, which is the interview stage. So after selecting the best candidates based on the CV and the application materials, they are going to select the best candidates with the highest potential, and they will invite these candidates to have a face-to-face or in-person interview with the team. At this stage, usually this is a sign of saying this person seems great, at least on the paper. I want to chat more to this person to understand if you are really good. I want to see more about you. So for those of who are watching this video and are scared of getting interviews, remember this is a good chance and you already made it so far to the application process. So you are very likely to get a job offer, and always look at the brighter side when it comes to interview invite. But the question is, when we talk about hundreds of applications, then probably half of the application is really good. So we're still speaking about like 100 or 200 applications that are pretty good. So how do companies actually prioritize what are the candidates they need to invite? So what they usually do is they're going to invite by batch. So they usually start with the most promising candidate, for example, like 5 candidates, because the person who is going to interview are usually the team member or the manager, so they have very limited time. They're going to prioritize the most suitable candidate or the candidate with the highest potential for this job. So usually the first round of interview is done by the HR. They're going to send you an invite, have some conversation, ask you some basic questions. The idea in the first round of interview with HR is to understand if you are a good enough person and if you are someone who is the same as the person who says on the paper. And usually if you're a decent candidate, you don't really lie on your CV, and you should pass through the first interview stage pretty easily. After the first round of interview, then later interviews are mostly about your technical skills and your soft skills. The team is going to ask you more questions about how you behave in certain scenarios. They're going to ask you about the past project, any past similar experience, or hypothetical questions. Sometimes they even ask you to do certain tasks to understand if you are capable of solving problems at different cases. And depending on how many interview rounds there are, it could be 2 in total, it could be 3, or sometimes it could be even 5. I have done 5 rounds of interview for one company. So usually what the company do is they're going to do a few batches, like I mentioned before. They're going to take the first batch and interview them. They will select a couple of candidates within the first batch to go on to the second round of interview, and then select a few more to go to the final round of interview, and then they will make a decision to say, okay, this is the person I want to hire. But there's also the scenario where the first batch all of the people go through this process, and then they made an offer to one person, but this person essentially didn't go through, they didn't accept the offer, or they didn't find the right candidate for the first batch. So they might have to do another batch in order to get more candidates into the pipeline. So if you're someone who wants to get a really good chance of getting into a job, the earlier you apply, the best. You might be in the first batch of candidates who has the highest chance for getting this job, just because this is the first batch the company is going to interview, and they may not have the second round of batch if they already find the right candidate from the first batch. Another thing I want to mention when it comes to making a decision on which candidate to hire is not every decision is perfect. I remember discussing with my manager at the end of the last round of the interview we are struggling between two candidates. They both have similar experience and they're equally capable, but one candidate is more creative and the other candidate is much more analytical and operational. So we had some chats and discussion because we knew we want to take both of them, but we only have place for one. We weighted out all the benefits and risk, as well as the pros and cons of going with each candidate, and we made the decision to go with the person who is more operational, just because at the moment we need someone who is more operational. And always remember, when a company hires, they usually hire under a very tight deadline, or they need someone who can join the company and do the work as soon as possible. Therefore, they need to get someone really quickly, and the decision they made under that scenario is not always the perfect, and it's really hard to get a perfect decision anyway. So in this video, I talked about 5 key stages when a company hires for a new position. The goal for you for this video is to get the insight of how company works when they're hiring, so you understand how the company behave. Once you understand how company behave and recruit, you will be able to understand how you can optimize each stage of this application process, because what they're looking for you is also what you're looking for from them. All of the information I provide in this video hopefully will help you to understand how you can optimize each stage of the application process and in the end land yourself a good job. I'll see you guys in the next video.